Dennis Schroder is finally signed for the Sacramento Kings. It took a little bit of time after free agency. We thought this signing was going to get done right as free agency began, but instead it took a little bit of time. It started with the Jonas Valanciunas trade for Dario Saric. Kings trying to shave a little bit of money off, which, it saved them $5 million this season, and then Valanciunas had $10 million contract that wasn't guaranteed for next season. Dario Saric is an expiring deal. So the Nuggets get a backup center. The Kings get off that $5 million for this season. Not exactly an inspiring trade. And, I was hoping they would get like at least 1 second round pick back in that because they spent 2 second round picks for Valanciunas. But, here we are. And so they used that flexibility to then be able to sign Dennis Schroder to a 3-year, $45 million deal. And so I was coming in expecting a 2-year deal. Instead, it's 3. Apparently, there's a partial guarantee on that 3rd year. And so everything about these moves, both of these moves, the Valanciunas trade, the Dennis Schroder signing, everything is just so meh. Nothing about it is inspiring. But, that's what I thought was going to happen coming into the season. I didn't expect anything inspiring. I didn't expect the Kings to be able to commit to a rebuild. And I also didn't expect them to be able to make changes that would completely turn this team around and make them competitive. This is just the place we're in. And the problem is this might not even be the last season of just this middling, because you still have Zach LaVine, who has a player option next season. You still have Sabonis. He has 3 seasons on his deal. DeMar has a partial guarantee for next season. Monk has 3 years on his deal. And so you might be in this situation for longer than we would hope. And hopefully it can be just this season. That's the transition period. Hopefully, but I'm not so sure, because I don't even think teams are going to want to take on an expiring LaVine or a Sabonis with 2 years on his deal. And so when you think about it that way, like Dennis Schroder getting an extra year on his deal, what does it really matter? Because that's not going to be the restricting or limiting factor for the Kings when it comes to what they're trying to do. Dennis Schroder having an extra year at $15 million or a little above $15 million, who cares? The thing about Dennis Schroder is he's a nice player. He's gonna help the Kings this coming season. Finally, the Kings get a point guard, and they were able to do it without a sign-in trade, at least for now. Things don't become official until July 6th, so of course this could be wrapped into a sign-in trade and moves could be made, and that might happen. But Dennis Schroder is going to help this team. No matter whether you were going to rebuild or you were going to stay competitive or you're going to stay in the middle, no matter what the Kings did, they needed to get a point guard, because that's just the way the NBA works. And I know if a team is rebuilding and if a team isn't truly going for it, people will say, why does it matter? But in the NBA, teams just need to be built a certain way, even if you're not really going to be competitive. And so you need a point guard. And you got one in Dennis Schroder. Spotrac has his contract estimated at $14.2 million this season, $15 million next season, $15.7 million the season after that, again with a partial guarantee on that 3rd year. We're not exactly sure how much that partial guarantee is right now. And so Dennis Schroder is going to come in, and he's going to be a solid offensive player. He's going to help run the offense. He's going to be a solid playmaker. He's going to be able to score the ball and work the pick and roll, get to the rim. He's going to be able to push the pace, which is something that the Kings need. And he's going to be a solid defender. But then you look at the Kings roster, adding Dennis Schroder, and there still is a gluttony of guards. You still have Zach LaVine. You still have Malik Monk, Devin Carter, Keon Ellis. Right now, technically, Terrence Davis still on the roster. And DeMar DeRozan, if you want to add him in there as well. And so that's why I'm thinking this could still end up being a sign-in trade in some way. But obviously, the Kings did not just want to do a sign-in trade where you send out Malik Monk for Dennis Schroder straight up, because that doesn't make any sense. And in the Pistons were, I guess, not willing to give up the proper draft compensation, but we'll see if that changes or if some other teams get involved. Things can get very complicated before everything becomes official, because the Kings cannot go into this season with all of these guards. Can they? I don't think so. But like I said, this Dennis Schroder deal, while it's not exactly inspiring, he is a player that's, right now, he's worth $14.2 million. He's pretty similar to a Malik Monk level of player, if we're being honest. And he's making less than Malik Monk. But of course, Malik Monk is younger and has a higher ceiling and all that. But I'm just saying, like, this isn't necessarily a bad deal. It's just not an inspiring deal. But what I hate about this offseason is that it feels so helpless because we don't know if the Kings are going in the right direction or not. We don't know if the Dennis Schroder move or the Jonas Valanciunas move, if these are good moves yet, because we don't know why Scott Perry is doing them. We don't know the thought process behind him. Is he making this move because he's just trying to bring Dennis Schroder in because you need a point guard and you need to establish some identity and some culture, but really you're going to move into a rebuild? And so if you move into a rebuild in the coming seasons, this Dennis Schroder contract isn't going to matter because the limiting factor is the Levine and the Sabonis deals. But if Scott Perry is like, we're bringing in Dennis Schroder, and for the next 3 seasons, he's going to be our starting point guard, and we're trying to compete, and we're going to try to keep getting better, that's not a good direction to be going in. And with the Valanciunas move, if you're just making the Valanciunas move just because you love Dennis Schroder so much and you have to make room for him and you don't want to pay the luxury tax, that's not great. But if you're making the Valanciunas move because you're trying to get off of guys who aren't the best defensive players and you're trying to make room for a rookie in Maxime Renault and you're trying to get off of Valanciunas' 2-year contract, even though it is non-guaranteed in the second year, and you're just trying to flip this roster around to get rid of the Monte McNair guys and bring in the Scott Perry guys, then that's fine, you know? And I like that Scott Perry is just willing to make that deal, the Valanciunas for Saric deal, without worrying about whether he's losing the trade or not, because yeah, he's losing the trade. Valanciunas for Saric, that's losing a trade. Saric is not a good player. He's on an expiring deal. I doubt he's going to play much for the Kings. Valanciunas is good depth for the Nuggets. And so I like that Scott Perry is just willing to make the move, even though the previous front office gave up 2 second-round picks for Valanciunas. He's like, we just got to make this move because the Kings just have to clear out this roster. And any moves that are working towards clearing out the contracts of this roster and getting rid of the players that don't really fit defensively on this team, then I'm all for that. And hopefully Scott Perry keeps pushing this team in that same direction, but the real test comes in trying to then move off of your top 4 guys. And until that is done, until you've at least moved off of 2 of your top 4 guys, then none of this is really going to matter, and we're not going to be able to see Scott Perry's vision in which way he's trying to push this team until those types of moves are made. I would say if Scott Perry is able to make one trade that gets off of one of the bigger contracts this season and clears out some of the shooting guards that we have, I would say that would probably be a win for this offseason. When you look at the salary table for this team, I just keep looking at it. It just looks so bad because it just feels like we're going to be in 2 years of helplessness, of going nowhere. And the only way that you're going to get out of that is if Scott Perry is somehow able to pull off a big move to get off of some of this salary at the top of the roster. At least the Kings have their picks. That's all I'm going to say, because Phoenix doesn't have their picks. So it could be worse. It really could be worse. I think Dennis Schroder is going to be a good player for the Kings, and it's not like he's blocking any young players from getting more minutes, really, because we don't have a point guard that's looking to, take his spot. We have some guards, but Dennis Schroder as a point guard should be able to help this team. Because when you look at last year, like, Domantas Sabonis really struggled after the De'Aaron Fox trade. Zach LaVine also didn't necessarily struggle, but he had trouble with fading in and out of games. We saw a lot of point DeRozan, which didn't help this team push the pace like it needed to. And so I think that's why Dennis Schroder coming in, it's going to help those guys. It's going to help everyone. And so if Dennis Schroder can come in and make other guys around him look better just by being a ball handler who can pass, then I think that's going to make this deal a win. And if this deal backfires and Dennis Schroder sucks and everything sucks, then what does it really matter? Because you are already locked into a horrible contract situation. At that point, Dennis Schroder's contract is probably not going to be one of your top worries. I think I've seen a lot of fans with their reactions to the signing of Dennis Schroder and kind of the direction that this team is headed, which is kind of nowhere or in the middle. I've seen a lot of people being like, I don't want to watch this team anymore. I'm giving up on this team. And honestly, like that's the best thing you can do. If you want this team to get better, stop watching this team. Stop spending your money going to games. Send a message with your wallet to Vivek Ranadive. You know that I'm not going to do that. I'm always going to be here. And that's kind of the problem, is that there are always going to be Kings fans here. The only way that Vivek Ranadive would get the message of what Kings fans want this roster to do is if everyone just stops spending money and it hurts his bank account. But I just feel like that's not going to happen because Sacramento loves the Kings too much for that to happen. I really hope that the Kings are able to make more moves this offseason in terms of trades to rebalance this roster. I'm a little skeptical about whether that actually will happen. But I think when it comes to Scott Perry, you have to give him until next offseason to really judge him, unless he makes like some really big, stupid move. Like, obviously, you can judge him then. But to really see what direction and how good of a job Scott Perry is doing, I feel like you have to give him until after next offseason to see where this team is really at. So if you're one of those people that hates that idea, then I would say to you, don't watch this team and come back a year from now and see where the team is at. I wish I could just snap my fingers and be 1-2 years ahead of now in fast forward time on this roster. But unfortunately, that's just not where we're at. So anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be right back here if more moves happen to talk about them. So I will see you guys then. Peace.